Welcome to lesson number 5. In today's lesson, we are looking at lists. Specifically, how to create lists, how to append, which is add data to a list, and how we can print from a list. Now, there will be a part 2 to this video because there is a lot in lists, but we're just going to start with the basics in lesson number 5. So let's start. We are going to make another new Python file. We're going to call this one lesson 5.0, and we might say lists, or we might say part 1. So instead of 5.0, we're actually supposed to go 05.1. We'll say part 1. Click OK. Alright, so we are looking at lists. Now, lists appear really easy to begin with, and I'll show you why. They look just like a normal data type. So if I say to do list equals, and so far we know what's going on here. We're saying, okay, we're making a variable called to-do list, but instead of putting a value in, we make these square brackets like so. And what these square brackets indicate are we're going to hold a certain amount of data within this variable range. To-do list is the name of our list, and then we're going to hold a bunch of values in here. And just to indicate that, let's add some values in. Now, with Python, we can add anything we want into this list. With other programming languages, this is called an array, and normally you can only put one data type, but Python makes it easy for us. So we're going to add a bunch of things that we need to do. So let's say homework. That's the first thing, and I'm going to put a comma. And what's the second thing I need to do? I'm going to say wash car. Cool. And what's the third thing I need to do? I'm going to say, I don't know, clean room. Okay, so I have 3 things in my to-do list that need doing. If I go print, like so, and I say print bracket to-do list, it will print this list out in its entire form with the brackets and all. So watch this, right click and run, and you can see it printed everything out. So my whole list, it printed. What I can do though, if I just want one part of this list, is I can specify the thing I want. Now I could do it in a bunch of ways. Like for example, you could make a new variable and you could say top equals to-do list, and then you do square bracket and you say 2. And then let's say print top. Now before I push that print button, I want you to have a guess. What do you think is going to be printed from my list? So I said top is equal to to-do list, and I'm going to print whatever's at position number 2. So have a guess. What do you think it's going to be? Will it be homework, wash car, or clean room? Well, let's find out. It was clean room. Now you might be thinking, hang on, shouldn't that be number 3? Well, no. With a list, it starts off at position 0. And the name for the positioning is called an index value. So the index value in this list starts at 0. So this here would be 0. So if I wrote print what's at position 0, kind of like our video starting at 0, if I print that, it prints me homework. So you can see that's at 0, that's at 1, that's at 2, whoops, don't move that around, and so on. So by saying print at position 0, well, that's giving me this value here. You can also see it comes out a lot nicer when you print a position instead of just printing the whole list. Because remember, if we print just the whole list, you kind of get all the other stuff that comes along with it. Okay, so there we've been able to print a specific position of our list, which is great. And here we've been able to print what's in our list, but how can I add stuff to my list? I mean, I've already got some stuff in there, but maybe I have completed all of that and I need to add some more things in there for next time. So we can use this function called append. Now, if you don't know what a function is yet, don't worry. You're going to learn about them later on. But let's say this. We're going to say add item equals input. What would you like to add? Question mark. So they're going to add something, and then we say to-do list dot, and you can see here's heaps of things you can do inside of a to-do list, but we didn't have to worry about them. We're going to use the second one called append. So I'm going to write append and then bracket. And what append means is whatever they've added in items, so whatever's in this area here, so let's add item, I want you to add it to the next location on the list. The reason it has to be the next location is, if I've already got something at position 0, so I'm going to put homework back in, and they go and append something to the list, well, it needs to go behind homework. I don't want it to remove homework. I want it to add it in at the next available location. So if I now run this list, let's get rid of that. And I want to print the whole list. There we go. So if I run that, it's going to say, hey, what would you like to add? And I might say wash, wash car, add it back in. And you can see the next location, it added it in. Something you will notice though is when I run the program again, well, it's now deleted the other stuff on my list. So this is what's known as hard coding, meaning I've coded this into the actual code, this homework option, which means I can never really get rid of it unless I actually edit the code. What we're doing here is we're only soft coding it in, meaning when I add an item in, it'll work, it'll be there while the program is open. So if I run it again, let me add wash room, and you can see wash room comes in. Don't know who's washing their room, but there you go. All right, so we now can add items to a list. We know how the locations work at the list, but what if I want to add, let's say, 10 items to my list? Okay, so I start off with a blank list because everything was completed, and now I want to add some things to my list. How could I add 10 items to my list? Is there a way? Well, we can use something like a while loop or a for loop, or we could also do it manually. So in our next lesson, we're looking at how we can add loads of different items to a list and how we can remove items from a list and update and things like that. But for this video, all we need to be able to do is actually create a list, be able to add an item into the list, and print an item at a specific location. The last thing I'm going to show you is the kind of error you get when you try and print something that doesn't exist in a list. So for example, if I go print to-do list at position 2. So obviously we don't have anything at 0, 1, or 2, and we're going to add something at 0. So let's see the issue we get. So let's add something in, I don't know, new. And you can see I got this index error, and it says list index out of range. Well, that's because nothing exists at position 2. Now I could very easily fix it if I just did this. A, B, C. Well, now if I run the same code, it'll work fine. E, and you can see it was able to print C because there was something that was at position 2. So if you don't have anything in there, that's the error you're going to get. It's an out of range error, and it's quite common, especially when we're using things like loops and so on to add to the list. But that's all we're doing for this video. In the next one, we'll look at how to add multiple things all in one session to the list. See you on the next one.